Good evening, and welcome to Having a Drink with Mink, now sponsored by Farouk's Camel Emporium. Remember, if your dromedary ain't from Farouk's, it ain't worth spit. I am your host, Jason Mink, and I may have a problem. In the past few months, I've picked up some more Archie comics for the collection. About 200 of them, in fact. Look, I got a great deal, and besides, I left behind about 500 more, so the way I see it, I'm actually making progress. Instead of just dribbling these out over an eternity, I figured, what the hell, let's just do them all at once, in an episode that could only be called Archie Andrews Overdrive. We start with himself, the alpha and omega of MLJ Publishing. It's America's favorite teener, Archibald J. Andrews, although his friends call him Chick. As I have hundreds of Archie comics in my collection, and I've never seen him called Chick once, it's clear that Archie has no friends. Oh sure, there are the usual scoundrels, bums, and hangers-on, but we'll get to them in a moment. Making his debut in Pep Comics 22, Archie has seen continuous publication since 1941, a feat few comics characters can claim. However, Mr. Andrews has not gone unchanged over the years, slowly transforming from a juvenile delinquent prototype into the beloved ginger oaf of today. The constants of Archie are his undying love for rich girl Veronica Lodge, his snubbing of the equally smitten Betty Cooper, and a propensity for causing chaos, no matter what the situation. The bane of authority figures everywhere, Archie essentially flees from strip to strip, a red-headed refugee outrunning the consequences of his actions thanks to the constantly resetting nature of his universe. It's basically Groundhog Day if Bill Murray were a horny broke teenager who still lived with his parents. I said Archie didn't have any friends, but that's mere histrionics. We all know Archie and Jughead Jones are the best of pals. But while Archie has a complex set of ego motivators, Jughead has a more basic nature, driven by food, more food, twice, and then a place to sleep it off. Unfazed by romantic attachment, he's perpetually on the run from the machinations of one Big Ethel and anyone who tries to get him to do actual work. In spite of what the 1990s would have you believe, Jughead pretty much invented slack, although he was too busy sleeping in a hammock to take credit for it. Born into a wealthy family, Veronica Lodge insists upon the best of everything, so why she's interested in Archie is anyone's guess. It's funny how some chicks will settle for ground chuck when they could have prime rib. Often petty and mean-spirited, Veronica frequently takes her anger out on best friend Betty Cooper, her long-term rival for Archie's affections. It's a wonder Betty's parents haven't put a restraining order out on this little monster, but hey, you can get away with a lot with a rich daddy. Veronica is obsessed with fashion, trends, and, most importantly, herself. Although not necessarily in that order. Betty Cooper is a sweet and humble kid from a working-class family whose down-to-earth nature is usually at odds with their situation. Bright, resourceful, and reliant on common sense and persistence, Betty often finds herself mixed up in comedy capers with her best friend / mortal foe, Veronica Lodge. Think Abbott and Costello, but nicer to look at. Her obsession with our freckled protagonist is the stuff of legend, and more than a few stalking and public harassment laws. She's been a spy, a superhero, and whatever this is, but she's never boring. And then there's Reggie Mantle. Vain, egotistical, hyper-competitive. In short, he's a prick. Every comic has one, but few have come to personify the archetype more than Mr. Mantle. From his smarmy facial expressions to his endless burns tailor-made for his copper-top nemesis, Reggie has been a thorn in Archie's side from the beginning, undercutting him at every turn. And while the occasional uneasy truce may be brokered to achieve some mutual goal, in the end Reggie and Archie remain oil and water, a messy and unstable combination that's a pain to clean up after. And there's more, of course. You can't have Archie without the perpetually perturbed principal, Mr. Weatherby, the perspicacious pops of the malt shop, or Veronica's ever-irate father, Mr. Lodge. Add in the brainy, doily, lunk-headed alpha male Big Moose and his easily seduced girlfriend, Midge, and you have a colorful cast of characters whose stories have stood the test of time. The gang's adventures take place in the idyllic pocket universe of Riverdale, USA. From the monochromatic confines of their high school to the seemingly endless beaches and drive-ins, Archie and his fellow teeners cavort in a four-color world untroubled by real-world concerns. And we like it that way. After all, I don't read an Archie comic because I need to be told what to think or how to feel. I read them because they leave all that at the door and focus on entertaining me with snappy dialogue and groan-worthy jokes. And boy, do we get those in spades. The Claw explores the enchanted animal paw trope with Juggy unloading a felonious foot on his pal Archie. And it's not just any pilfered appendage, it's 100% Vampire Bat, renowned for its weird supernatural qualities. I guess. Invoking its uncanny power, Arch wishes that Veronica was all his, and before you can say Jodie Foster, a curious change occurs. Seems America's top teen has switched places with fussy old Mr. Lodge. Even worse, Lodge now inhabits Andrew's lanky frame. Even worse still, his favorite ancient Grecian urn has found itself in play. Maybe a good strong jerk will solve the problem? You know, it usually does. Speaking of, if you have a friend long enough, inevitably, you're going to walk in on him doing something weird, like poor Jughead here. Meet Mecco, the mechanical boy, whose expression pretty much says it all. Can you call social services on behalf of robots? Because I don't think I can sleep tonight knowing that this is going on. His mouth isn't that shape by sheer coincidence, folks. Just tell us what happened, Mecco, and we could put this deviant behind bars, where he belongs. In Archie and Dreamland, we get a glimpse of our protagonist's fantasy island. Say what you will about the lack of electricity or running water, it's got its own comic book library. To Veronica's Lake, cute. Reggie's Foxhole, a bit less so. And how about this featurette on Archie's Jalopy? Much like the Batmobile or the Millennium Falcon, it's really a character unto itself. It's certainly got its owner into, and out of, a lot of trouble. Here are the gals that you won't catch in this crazy ride, and the one you will. Good old Betty. Wait a minute. She wearing a straitjacket? Here's a little something from my oldest issue of Betty and Veronica. Even in this early incarnation, the girls are hyper-competitive, here to the point of violence, although the pair quickly turn their ire on Archie himself. After pushing him down the stairs, they administer first aid, although it looks like it hurts even worse now. Still, contact is contact. Am I right, fellas? In Spot Remover, Betty decides bringing back the old beauty mark fad is worth a shot, but her attempts at glamour are cruelly mocked. Of all the MLJ characters, I think Betty is the one most likely to head up to the bell tower, if you know what I mean. And while it seems like a failed experiment at first, an unexpected kiss from Jughead soon shows there's more to this fad than meets the eye. Intrigued, Veronica embellishes herself with a spot, getting the same slobbery response. However, things get out of hand when Juggy gives Big Moose's girlfriend Midge a little sugar, getting a beauty mark all of his own. Pharaoh Fowl sees the gang cutting up in an Egyptian tomb, thanks to a launch-sponsored treasure dig. Back before everyone got so sensitive, it was Jake to disturb priceless antiquities and treat other people's culture like a dollar box at the flea market, and dig Jughead, making like Ramses II. Turns out he fell into the treasure room, and it's chock full of baubles, bangles, and beads, obviously of interest to old what's-her-face here. And while it's all fun and games at first, soon enough the eternal Egyptian's wrath manifests, setting the pyramid a-tremble and driving the kids from the sacred site. A condo made of stona, indeed. Addiction is played for laughs in this strip, where Juggy is jonesing for a soda. A bit cavalier, perhaps, but back then, humor was whatever was funny. Angry at Archie for saving his money for a date with Veronica, Jughead decides he hates women. Considering he's the judge of the campus beauty contest, this is bad news for the girls, at least until they start buying him off with food. However, this backfires when Jughead panics and crowns Helena Hafton. He's then set upon and beaten by the other girls with baseball bats. More innocent times. Back before lawyers ruined everything, readers could suggest ideas for strips or one-pagers, as seen here. That Dean Willis was one sophisticated kid, and it looks like Archie picked the wrong week to quit smoking. Veronica, on the other hand, can't seem to help it. In Don't Go Near the Water, Ronnie is playing her usual sociopathic head games, telling Archie she's invited everyone over to her pool when she did no such thing. When Arch encounters the gang in the wild, he mistakenly has them tag along, leading to one PO'd Veronica. Instead of just going with the flow, she demands the other kids get out of the pool and stay on the sidelines while she swims, something that rubs Mr. Lodge the wrong way. He decides to show his daughter how to lighten up, but is tackled by the boys before he can dive in. Turns out Veronica drained the pool out of spite, and Lodge was just saved from a big surprise and hospital bill. Disgusted by his child's behavior, Lodge forces Ronnie to sit and suffer under a mink. Well, Mom always said I'd be in comics someday. Susie is an oft-forgotten MLJ character, once popular enough to share page space with Archie and the gang, although their worlds didn't really intersect. Here, Susie attempts to handcraft an outfit for an upcoming sewing competition, but a series of mishaps sees her options diminish by half, and then half again, until she only has enough cloth to make this skimpy bikini. Well, however you cut it, that's first prize material. The older I get, the more like Jughead I become, at least when it comes to dealing with the rest of the world. As long as my creature comforts are met, the rest can hang, and I'll put a lot of work in to avoid a little effort. Case in point. To escape an unpleasant social situation, Jughead uses makeup to simulate having the pox. Say what you will, the guy is creative. You might want to throw that lipstick away, though, just in case. In Hats Off, Jughead loses his iconic headgear to a stiff wind. Instead of just blowing into the river or down into the sewer, the errant chapeau ends up in a millinery shop and onto the head of this wealthy dowager. She's taken in by the unusual design, and the shop owner, desperate to make a sale, offers to buy the cap from our cash-strapped hero. And while Jughead could certainly use the kale, the thought of everyone in town soon sporting look-alike hats sees him take the high road, preserving his iconic silhouette for decades to come. It's a good thing Veronica's rich, as she gets injured. A lot. I think this may have been a sort of release valve for regular readers. After all, audiences have always appreciated it when a cocky character gets their comeuppance, so seeing this pampered princess occasionally get knocked on her keister prevents us from developing a genuine dislike for her. Well, that's my theory anyway. Maybe it was just Dan DeCarlo and Company's way of dealing with having to write such an insufferable character day in and day out. Either way, Veronica Lodge has taken more spills than the Kool-Aid Man and has the stains to prove it. The Line is a fun little excursion into meta-storytelling as Arch and the gang discover a mysterious black strand stretching through their world. Reminds me of something Ernie Bushmiller might do, although this is nowhere nearly as visually adventurous. Gags like this didn't pop up often in Archie comics, with the continuity of their world fairly consistently maintained. And why not? MLJ knew what worked for them, and they didn't really tamper with the formula after a certain point. It's too bad, as strips like this can be a nice change of pace from the standard love triangle shenanigans. Egged on by a clearly overeager Veronica, Betty ruins her new hairdo by jumping in the ocean. And yet, in spite of her time in the water, Ronnie never has a strand out of place. Why? Well, it's because of her plastic-treated yak hair wig, of course. Pretty sure that's the same kind Devo wore. Imagine finding that thing washed up on the beach. You're gonna need a bigger comb. The stand-in sees Veronica forced to visit her sick Aunt Blatty, which means she'll miss accepting an award at the Daughters of American Wealth social event. Or will she? As Ronnie and Betty already look so similar, it'd be easy enough for Bets to stand in and accept the award in her friend's stead. Betty leaves with her new Veronica costume, yak hair wig and all, and this is the sort of thing that can really backfire. And look at that. It does, with Betty landing a date with no less than the Grand Duke himself. Later that night, drunk on pink champagne and her newfound power, Betty robs a bank, shoots a security guard, and pins the blame on Veronica. Well, at least that's what should have happened. And then there's Midge, making her debut as Midgie Smith in the pages of Archie's Pal Jughead #5. The formerly diminutive brunette soon had a growth spurt and name change to Midge Clump, which is a lateral move at best. The girlfriend of Big Moose Malone, Midge is often irritated by her beau's jealousy and violent reprisals, and acts out by encouraging the attentions of other boys. In short, she's bad news, although that doesn't stop Reggie from going for it every chance he gets. This leads to pain. Lots and lots of pain, although at one point a retcon was attempted which implied that it wasn't Moose but Midge herself responsible for the brutality, which elevates the character from harmless strumpet to violent, unhinged predator. Retcons suck. Treat 'em Rough sees the girls mooning over Midge's latest moose-based injury. Seems the big clod can't help but maul her during makeout sessions, leaving Miss Clump with a sprained wrist. This gets Betty all revved up, and she tackles the freckled object of her desire. And while Archie's kisses certainly thrill her, why, they might be better if he, pretended to be a caveman? Arch takes the hint and makes with the machismo, laying a second, more dynamic smooch on Betty, which obviously finds the mark. Emboldened by this new approach, Archie decides to try it on Veronica, who, to put it mildly, stomps a mud hole in his ass. You'll heal, son, but you'll never be the same. Life. It's all in how you look at it. Case in point, this hayseed visiting Riverdale applies the same priorities to his livestock as he does his dates. I gotta admit, I like his style. Speaking of secondary characters, Dilton Doily may be small of stature, but he's a big creep nonetheless, as we see in this strip where he takes advantage of Moose's naivety to smooch Midge. Multiple times. He'd just better be careful that she doesn't decide that she likes it. Hospital bills cost the same for everyone, no matter how short you are. In spite of sporting the Comics Code seal on every cover, Archie Comics managed to feature supernatural and horror elements that remained verboten to other publishers. Perhaps it was the humorous way in which these subjects were portrayed that allowed their appearance. After all, classic monsters were more popular than ever, thanks to afternoon creature features and midnight movie marathons on TV, so the genre was ripe for spoofing. Whatever the reason, Archie readers were treated to their fair share of spooks, albeit silly ones. Consider Monster Ball, which sees the teenagers excited for a school masquerade. Ronnie assumes this green goober is usual stooge Archie in disguise and makes plans to meet him later at the ball. Later that night, the wingding is in full swing, and the gang have a great time, what with the plasma pizza and the blood balloon race and the bobbing for brains and all. At the end of the party, the kids go their separate ways, but even monsters get a kiss goodnight in Riverdale. An old looking glass does more than reflect in Mirror Mirror. Warping reality itself, the mirror transforms Veronica and Betty into twisted, dolly-esque versions of themselves. And while we obviously find it amusing, the girls are justifiably distressed and struggle to unknit this horrifying new reality. However, the mirror isn't content with the havoc it's already caused and transforms Principal Weatherby into a handsome movie star type. Wilder still, it morphs Grundy into this silver fox. As they go off together to violate the sanctity of his principal's desk, we're forced to wonder, just what the hell am I reading here? Let's wrap things up with perhaps the most verboten topic yet, selling one's soul to the devil. Now, who in Ophelia Gluten-Schnabel did that, you might be asking? Why, both Betty and Veronica. After being spurned once again, Betty decides there's nothing she wouldn't do to get Archie. Knowing how to make an entrance, Mr. Inferno suddenly arrives, and he's willing to cut Betty a deal. For a price to be determined later, he'll fix her up on a date with Archie, which Bets readily agrees to. And you know what? It works. Archie is suddenly smitten by Betty, and everything's peaches and cake until Veronica shows up. Turns out she's already made the same deal with Inferno, and he's got to contend with two angry teeners. Knowing enough to scram, he calls the whole deal off, but still, pretty wild stuff. And there you have it. For sheer value, pound for pound, Archie Comics simply can't be beat. Disregard the manufactured spike in value for innuendo and bikini covers. There's still mountains of wonderful MLJ titles out there just waiting to be discovered on the cheap. Sure, they may not be 9.8s, but focusing on grade and monetary value is missing the point. These things are meant to be entertainment, not commodities. Packed with laugh-out-loud funny stories from some of the medium's finest creators, these older Archie books can bring a smile to even the most jaded of readers. Unlike superhero comics, they can still be found at flea markets, yard sales, and comic shops. Heck, come to Pittsburgh and I'll point you in the right direction. Alright, I'm gonna go lie down now. These trips to Riverdale can really take it out of a guy. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon with more fun stuff. Maybe no Archies for a while, though. I still can't get the taste of chocolate malt out of my mouth. Until the next time, I am Jason Mink. And if you see Big Moose, tell him I ran the other way. Cheers.